Yeah, got in Sunday night, and not much going on Monday. Kind of just some housekeeping stuff. Yesterday we had some AAA pitchers throw here, probably about 5 innings total, live at bats, which was nice. That went well. Getting accustomed to the field today, kind of a traditional workout. BP, some bullpens going on, and getting ready for tomorrow. But yesterday's focus was just seeing some live pitching, and today we'll kind of get in and get out and get ready for tomorrow.
Some guys on the roster have spoken about how they like this clubhouse more this year. Jose was just speaking about it a bit. Now that you know who's in that clubhouse, actually, what do you like more about it, and what value can that actually have?
Yeah, it's what you're always searching for is kind of that value that's not on the field, but that's here every day. I think just the talent we brought in and the people we brought in. It wasn't really by design. I think it kind of just happened naturally, but everyone's kind of speaking the same language, from myself to the staff to every single player, where they're worried about winning every single day. And that sounds easy to say, easy to do, but guys are really living it, and I think trying to be as close-knit as possible on and off the field. Everyone's at a different stage in their career. We are as a team than we were last year and the year before. So I think just trying to focus on that every single day has been key. And it's a good blend of veteran guys and young guys. And I think our young guys have turned into guys that have been around for a while. So they kind of know what to expect and kind of really are leaning into what's important.
John, with the uncertainty of the future of this team, given the high-profile players that are on expiring contracts, is there any added pressure to try and be a contender again this season?
No, I mean, there's always pressure. I think when you look at us the last handful of years, there's always pressure. There's always expectations. So I think rather than run from that, I think you lean into it a little bit, and everyone kind of gets where we are. I think if we let it affect us and what we're trying to do, it leads to not our best brand of baseball. So I don't think there's extra pressure. We understand what's at stake this year and every year, but I think to kind of put extra pressure on ourselves or for players to do it individually would be counterproductive.
Schneider, do you have a lineup you can share with us for tomorrow?
Not quite yet, but I got a pretty good idea. I know Jose's pitching. I know Kirky's catching. But yeah, we got a pretty good idea. It's not finalized yet, though.
Well, that negates the follow-up question entirely. Okay, thanks.
I would share more if I had talked to everyone who's involved. I'm doing that a little bit later.
John, there's no formula for getting out of the gate quick, because if there was, you would have done it. But what can you do, if anything, to reinforce the importance of a good start to the season and try to not be, somewhere between 15 and 12 and 12 and 15 at the end of April?
It sounds simple, but I think just focusing on what's important now, and just doing that every single day. We got to score. That's obvious. We got to score early and hopefully dictate what we're doing with our pitching. But it's just what's important within that, and that's all we've been talking about. So you want it to happen every single night. It doesn't happen every single night, but I think if we can be very, very aware of doing that more times than not, we'll be all right. We get our schedule. It's a tough schedule. Everyone in the league is good, and there's no real breaks, and teams have gotten better around the league. So, again, I think focusing on what we need to do and what is important for us every single night, hopefully that gets us off to a good start.
You were talking about the clubhouse earlier. Jose mentioned that he thinks the players have a better relationship with the coaching staff now. You said down in spring training that, one of the reasons that Davis was unlocked this spring, part of that was on the coaching last year and why there were changes. Can you talk a little bit about what the changes to the staff have done as far as the last couple of months and why they were important to make?
Yeah, always difficult to make changes, I think, first and foremost. And, it starts with me. I think kind of me, I think of me, Pete, Donnie, D, right, kind of just being another year together. I think that we're all kind of in a better spot than we were last year in how we operate. And that's both with, one another amongst, staff meetings, but I think it's with players too. And just having those reps and the ups and downs with the players and understanding how they tick. So that's part of it. And I think the additions, Pop, Lou, Sam and Graham. That's pretty catchy right there. But I think they all have kind of met us at a good time in their career too. You know, Pop's someone who got let go and probably has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. You know, there wasn't really a set reason as to why. And then you have Lou, who's making his major league debut as a coach. He's hungry. Same with Sam and Graham, you know. So when you're building a staff, you're trying to not only surround the players with the best possible information, people, and resources, but you're trying to kind of hit that blend of enthusiasm, kind of the want to do well too. That's going to meet up with the players, and I think we did that. So happy with the way it's rolled out so far. Obviously, it starts tomorrow, but I think they've done a really good job.
Hi, John. What are your honest expectations for the team? And your expectations, are they compartmentalized for the individual players? And would that be influenced by the heavy-handed analytics approach that this team takes?
Let me unpack that, Rosie.
I repeat it, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it's all right. My expectations for this team are always the same. I think it's you want to make the postseason and you want to do better than we have in the postseason. That's number one. Two, no, I don't think it's individually characterized between players. This is 26 guys pulling in the same direction. And three, I do not believe that this team is overly analytical. I think that is a brush that gets painted with us in a lot of organizations because of where the game is. But I do feel like we have found a really, really good blend of both. And if you're not using both, then you're not evolving with the game, and you're probably finding yourself in a bad spot for the long term. So if that answers it, I think. But if we can have 26 guys in the entire staff having the same goal and the same focus, that's kind of what we're shooting for, and usually good things happen.
John, with the way you guys organize your pitching, your team meetings, flow of information, what role does the catcher play within that, and how is Alejandro Kirk aligned with how you guys roll that out?
Catcher's huge. Catcher's vital, and he's an extension of really Pete and myself, if you will. What Kirky's done over the past couple of years, I think, has kind of led to him, or led to us really being committed to him long term. And it's been a work in progress, not just on the field, but in the clubhouse. Meetings, leadership, communication, all that goes into it, right? When you're locking up a player, it's for good reason, and he's kind of checked all those boxes. So are there areas for him to get better? Yeah, there's areas for everyone in the room to get better, whether it's on the field or with the way they're communicating, preparing on down the road. But I think he has shown that he can not only be elite on the field, but elite in the clubhouse, earning the trust of players, and he's heavily involved with game planning. There's a lot on his plate. I wish everyone could kind of walk through his day. It's a lot. It's every single meeting and then getting yourself ready for the game. So he's really, really moved the needle forward in that area.
And just on a bit of a different note, how do you envision, or maybe in your mind, what's sort of the best scenario to have a player like Alan Roto's broken camp as debut? Do you see that day after opening day? Do you like to find a specific spot? How do you envision sort of the best entry point?
I don't really think there is one. I think his heart rate would be going pretty fast, whether it's tomorrow, Friday, or Saturday. So, again, part of the reason we were comfortable with him coming up, again, small part, obviously performance is performance, but I think how he can process things in between his ears has been really, really fun to watch. So I don't think tomorrow is going to be more overwhelming for him than Friday or Saturday, and you're trying to put the best team on the field.
John, when you look pregame and in-game this year, what are the different responsibilities for DeMarlo versus Donnie in your guys' dugout?
Yeah, I think to put it bluntly, I think more DeMarlo defense, Donnie offense, and a lot of the similar characteristics of a bench coach. D's doing the running game. Donnie's talking about offensive strategies. I think the pregame prep, we're sitting there all talking about how we're trying to win that day, how we're going to deploy our bullpen, how we're going to deploy our bench, lineup construction a few days in advance, things like that. But the way I look at it is, if it's an offensive question, it's Donnie. If it's a defensive question, it's D. That's kind of how I break it down.
And just back on the note of clubhouse cohesion, did you guys learn something, going through some tough times last year about keeping a clubhouse together when things aren't going your way after the years of consistent winning and contending?
Yeah, clubhouses, man, they change every year. They change every week, every month, right? And you learn on the fly, I think players are driving it, and at the end of the day, players, they kind of own that space. And if we can be kind of in lockstep with them as to what's important and what's going on, then that's a win. So you learn every year, whether it's a good year or bad year. We learned from, years in the postseason just a couple years ago. You learn from that and you move on. And it changes with the personnel. It changes with the people. I do think there is something to be said about having new faces that are everyday players that are here on long-term contracts as opposed to one-year contracts. That rubs off. I think that it's more solution-focused as opposed to how do we fix this right now? How is this solution going to play out, for the next couple of years as opposed to today? So that's been different, but you learn every single year. And I think that where we've landed right now has been the best it's been in quite some time.
John, obviously you have a lot of new faces in your club. 4 prominent faces: Max, Hoffman, Tony, and Andres. We can see their talent. We can see what they do on the field. What do you see from a manager's perspective of how they help the character of this team?
Oof. I mean, I could sit here for hours. I think that, they're all about winning, and they do it in different ways. Himmy probably a little bit more under the radar than the other guys. Max is in your face. He's going to tell you what he thinks, rightfully so. He's a Hall of Famer, and I think that rubs off onto other guys, which is great. I feel like we've kind of been missing that in-your-face attitude a little bit. I love that we have it, both in the clubhouse and on the field. With Tony, it is kind of a combination of Max and Himmy, where he's not afraid to say something to you in real time, but he's going to be very thoughtful and very, very, respectful of what he's saying and how he's saying it to each different person. He's really, really good at reading people and understanding kind of how to treat them. Is it kid gloves? Is it a shove, or is it a punch? Tony, he can read the room really well. Same with Hoff. I think being around that team in Philly with some really veteran guys that don't pull any punches, I think he really learned a lot from those guys. And being in big situations, he learned a lot from those guys. So it's a good blend. Obviously on the field, thrilled to have those guys. But to kind of see the inner workings of their personalities unfold with the guys that we have here has been awesome.
John, can you give us an update on what the guys on the IL have done over the last few days?
Yeah, so Swanee, Burr, both playing catch. Swanee to 105 feet, Burr to 90 feet. That was today. Varsh played in a minor league game in center yesterday. Didn't make any throws, made a couple nice catches, and continued his at-bats there, and felt pretty good and continued his throwing program. So checking in with him daily, basically, but yesterday was the first day he actually got into the field in kind of a real game, with the caveat of not making any throws.
Okay, so not making any throws, that was by design?
That was by design, yeah.
Okay. And
Yep.
with Max, it's been a few days now since his I think, outing in Fort Myers. Where is he at with that thumb? How's it feeling now in the days since?
Yeah, I think still going in the right direction with how he's feeling each day. He's going to get off the mound today here this afternoon, and assuming all goes well like it has been, he'll be ready to roll Saturday.
Looking at the roster, it seems like you guys have 3-4 candidates to play center field, and understanding that'll probably be an evolving thing, but for the next maybe week, 10 days, how do you see that playing time working out for you guys?
You don't want to say even. It could be George, Nate, Miles, Allen. I think on any given day. How it shakes out, you could probably see Miles versus lefties, a combination of Lukey and Roden and George versus righties, depending on each night. But between those 4 guys, they'll have it covered. I don't know the exact breakdown. I mean, roughly in my head, yeah. You don't want guys sitting for too long. I do think, though, that multiple guys will find themselves in the game in that position at some point.
Would it be a fair read to guess that on days Straw's not starting, if you guys are up by a run or two, he could kind of take that Bradley Zimmer type role we saw a couple years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think kind of just seeing who is out there and then where we move a couple guys accordingly. But I think if that's what we're going to do, Miles will be in center, yeah.
John, on the pitching side, we've spoken a little bit about the strength of schedule here, how tough, I think it's 21 games, 1 day off.
Yeah.
Does that add any layers to how you manage your pitching staff to have this type of schedule early on in the season?
A little bit. We tried to do it in spring training, and we tried to have certain guys really get built up. You know, Hosey, Chris especially, Bowden through, I think he was 75 or 80 down there his last game. So we're trying to get these guys built up to A, hit the ground running, and B, not kind of kill our bullpen. So it is nice, I think, having Yariel there who can offer length early, but still be used kind of traditionally if needed. But we tried to do it in spring training to where everyone was ready. Guys are ready for back-to-back appearances in the pen. And I think our starters, probably with a little bit of Max being the exception in terms of, okay, ready to go 100 pitches, maybe a little bit different. But, yeah, you got to be careful with it. And I think you have to be very, very aware of how these guys are feeling because they're veteran guys, and we're going to be in constant communication with them.
John, with Kirk, a few minutes ago he identified the area of his game that's grown the most over the last couple of years is the mental component.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen from him in that regard?
Exactly that. You know, I've seen his skills get better just on the field behind the plate, right? The traditional catch, block, throw. But the mental part, yeah, when you're in a timeshare, I feel like for a couple of years with whether it's Jano or Gabby, whoever it was, you go about it a different way. You're perhaps a little bit different. You're not as assertive in certain areas. And I think now, or even going back to last year, he took a step forward in that, understanding, okay, it was probably after we traded Jano, and it was, okay, this is my team. So that was where I saw the biggest jump. You know, and when I say mental, it's just, it's a lot of it is prep. You know, a lot of it is, okay, what do I have to do for each and every pitcher every single night and every single inning? So that's where I've seen the most growth. I think he hit the nail on the head there.
With Scherzer, was there anything done before the last start or since this last start, medical trainers that helped this quiet down, or was it just like the 10-day break helped it quiet down?
Yeah, I think the rest kind of helped quiet it down a little bit and kind of working with him and him knowing how to navigate it a little bit. So nothing out of the ordinary. But, you know, I think it's, again, I'm not speaking for him, but when he gets ramped up and rolling, he's pretty good, and it's just kind of how he's feeling the next day. And I do think that little bit of a break, I think we were smart about it. You know, I think it was after his third outing where we kind of hit pause a little bit. I think that was beneficial for him, and so far so good.
Separate topic. Almost every guy would tell you they'd rather play in the field than DH.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like a rough plan in your head? I can DH this guy twice a week, this guy once a week, just to try to get everybody through there?
Yeah, rough plan, and have, you know, communicated that with some guys. And guys are different, you know. I talked about it down in Florida. Vladdy doesn't like it. Bo doesn't like it. And again, not going to force that on anyone, but want to be smart about it. So a lot of it is how we're built too. It seems like we have a lot of outfielders, so I think that kind of, you know, draws one of them into that role every night. But have a rough plan, yeah, and you kind of make adjustments as you go.
John, related to Julia's question a little bit, I mean, with the starting staff that you have that are, shall we say, experienced, this team's done a pretty good job of keeping them healthy for the duration of a season over the past couple of years. Walk us through what leads to that, whether it's coaching staff, whether it's the players themselves, or the training staff. How have you been able to get so much out of these veteran guys?
With pitching, right, there's luck involved. I mean, guys get hurt around the league, you know. So I think we do a really good job of being really intentional with our programs that we put in place, from a throwing program to what the guys are doing in the training room. I think we have great people, from Andrew Pipkin, Jose Ministral, the entire group, with putting those plans together. And I think we have great people communicating with a great pitching coach and Pete. I feel like I'm just giving a lot of compliments right now, but they've really bought into it, and they trust the staff, and we trust them. So it is a little unique that you have older guys that are kind of all going through the same thing. But it's just constant communication and the willingness to adjust.
We saw Will Wagner in the spring show that he can handle third base. And you've got a guy who was nominated for a Gold Glove who was there pretty much every day for you last year. How do you see that split going, or is it going to be a split at third?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be like a 50-50 split. Each game and each series is a little bit different. I think that this team is obviously a lot different than it was last year when Ernie was playing every day. So, again, not that he won't be heavily involved, but I don't think there's a few guys that you're just penciling in, right? There's a few guys that you're doing that for as much as you can go until they need a break. But a lot of the other guys, it's kind of, okay, how are you helping today? What's your skill set? How is it valuable today? So I have no problem with Will at third. Obviously, we like Ernie's overall game, especially his defense at third, and you try to just pair it the best you can. But in terms of a split, we'll see. Will can DH, he can play first. Vlad can do both as well. So each and every night, we're just looking for what they're great at to kind of help us win.
And as far as the bullpen goes, I don't know if you ever said that Hoffman's your closer, but he seems to be operating under that impression. Is that going to be the case? And if so, what do you like about him there, having never had that role locked down in his career?
That's the primary case. Yeah, we're lucky to have him, Garcia, Chad, guys that can close out games. They all know that kind of on any given night. I would say this about Hoff: he's pitching probably the 8th and the 9th for now, and if it's the 8th inning to where it's a part of the lineup where you're like, okay, I want him in against these certain hitters, that's communicated to him before the game, as long as you have people that you feel comfortable with, pitching behind him in the 9th. So is he the closer? Yeah, he's the closer. But I think you're going to deploy him, on certain nights, maybe a little bit different. With Jimmy, I think he kind of slides into the 9th if it's not Hoff. And you can kind of just back the inning down one with each one of those guys as to where they're pitching. What I love about Jeff is his mentality, professionalism, consistency, and the fact that he has 3 pitches. When you have 3 pitches, it keeps your splits pretty even, righty lefty, and it just gives you more options. One less pitch or one more pitch a hitter has to deal with. So swing and miss with heater, split, and slider, that's a real luxury to have. And not many closers have that. Not many guys late in the game have 3. We're lucky that him and Jimmy each have 3, in Jimmy's case, maybe 4 really good pitches. So it makes it tough to match up.
John, a couple questions. Just to follow up on Hoffman. He obviously had a pretty winding career path. He's talked about sort of seizing control of his career a little bit more in terms of what he wanted to do in the mound from a mechanics perspective, delivery, et cetera. I'm just wondering what your impressions have been talking with him, watching him work, about how his path has impacted the way he handles himself and his approach on the mound now.
Yeah, good question. He doesn't take anything for granted, and I think really settling into the bullpen role, going from kind of a journeyman starter, if you will, has, I think, made him more aware of his delivery, his mechanics, and his pitches. And when you're narrowing down your pitches to a reliever's mix as opposed to a starter, you realize what you're good at, and you realize how they play. So I think there's with anyone who's really good late in games, there's a big sense of situational and self-awareness that has to go on to thrive in those spots. So his path, I think, has led him to get to that point. And then obviously you need to have the reps. You need to have the leverage reps. He did that in Philly, whether it's regular or postseason. So kind of checks every box.
All right, just on a bit of a different note. Do you have a plan? Is it a priority to find ways to ensure that the length Yariel's built up doesn't disappear?
Yes and no. We're not going to force it. I think that in certain games early in the season, if there's a time where we can get multiple innings out of him, that's great to kind of keep the length built in. But we're not going to wait around and say, okay, we need a 3 or 4 inning outing out of here, and now you're going to pitch, and then you're down for 2 days. So I think we have to be pretty intentional with the work in between. But we're going to use him as a normal reliever. But if there are spots for multiple, score dependent, we'll do that too.
John, I have a question about Bo, and it's 2 questions. First of all, you know Bo as well as anybody. In your mind, where is he compared to where he has been in previous seasons in a confidence level, in an execution level, as far as offense?
Yeah, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he's right up there with the best I've ever seen him. And we all know what he can do on the field, especially in the batter's box. So he was, to me, the most impressive guy in camp from a variety of different for a variety of different reasons. Obviously, he hit the shit out of the ball, and what he did on defense, clean defense, making plays that he hasn't made in the past, and what he's done kind of in the clubhouse. And I think kind of just his overall mindset coming in every day. So focused and deliberate is kind of what I think about with him, and he's about as ready as I've ever seen him at the major league level.
How do you think the presence of a regular second baseman will help him during the course of a season?
Yeah, I think back to when Marcus was here and how much Bo was vocal about how much he helped him. I think he's doing the same thing right now. It's tough. People don't, it's, you know, most people don't realize that when you're operating with kind of a different person up the middle every day, it's a little bit weird. You know, it's a little bit weird for Vlad too, I think, on the other side. So having that presence, I think, not only just to have it every day, but to have that caliber every day next to him has been awesome. And they talk about it. I know Bo's talked about it publicly, but it makes a big difference.